Angela writes in that she has a next door neighbor who has allowed members of her subdivision to use the backyard as a community garden. This was an interesting question. She says in this email that in the spring and the summertime, it can get pretty messy back there. And she says she's planning to sell her home this summer and is worried that the mess will deter buyers. And she wants to know, what can she do? And I will tell you, a messy backyard to a buyer that comes into the next door neighbor can deter a sale. So that is a true problem. Cora, what can she do?
2 points there. First, I'll address her direct question, which is if she's concerned about a neighboring property and the condition of it or the practice of it, however they're using that property, she probably, since she mentioned she's in a subdivision, check those HOA restrictions. So I think it's a nice thing that they have that community garden, but is the neighbor outside of the restrictions so that you can ask the HOA to enforce the cleanup and or refusal for continuation of that to exist. The second piece I wanted to mention too is just I hope the neighbor's getting a license for all those people to come onto our property for a particular purpose. But
Wait. So what does that mean? The neighbor needs a license?
Not a license like to have a garden or anything, but like basically that is a legal concept for she's granting permission for these other people to use her property, to come onto the property for a specific purpose. It's a privilege, but it's also can be revocable by the grantor at any point in time. So it's unlike an easement, but it's kind of similar concept, Bob. But a license, what that will do is that prevents any type of adverse possession claim, right? Because ultimately you've got neighbors coming on and using your property as a garden, and you don't want them to say, hey, I've used this for a statutory time frame, therefore I should have rights to this property. But that's kind of a sidebar situation.
Yeah, right.
But for the neighbor, again, like we've probably all been in that situation, whether it's a direct adjoining landowner or somebody in our subdivision, we're like, I maybe don't like the way they've let that overgrown vines on their house or the landscaping choice or, whatever. But we have very little control over that because it's not your property. So the only legal way that I can think of is if they are using that property in a way that is against a restriction that you could say, hey, you have to clean it up because of this. Or if there's like a county ordinance, when I say restriction, that's kind of a private, covenant there with a subdivision. But is there a county ordinance? What can we look to from a legal standpoint to ask them to clean it up other than, hey, I'm trying to sell my house and I think that's a real downer over here on the price. Lastly, I'll just mention, is it a nuisance? Which it doesn't really sound like it's a nuisance, but that might be a claim you'd want to look into regarding just does that impact her use and enjoyment of her property?